Hi everyone, and welcome to this presentation on culturally competent research going from competency to humility to inclusion. So let's start off with a definition of culturally competent research that is from the Harvard Clinical and Translational Science Center. Although, to be honest, I've seen this exact definition in a couple other places, not citing this source, so I'm not 100% sure where it's from. But in any case, here it is. The ability of researchers and research staff to provide high-quality research that takes into account the culture and diversity of a population when developing research ideas, creating the theoretical and conceptual framework, designing the study, conducting the research, interpreting and exploring the applicability of the research findings, and disseminating the results. So essentially, every aspect, every step of the research requires cultural competency. But seriously, culturally competent research involves being aware of and appropriately responding to the ways in which cultural factors and cultural differences should influence what we investigate, and how we interpret our findings. So why is this important? Well, language and culture can influence beliefs about mental health, behavioral health, and other concepts that we're interested in, other social problems, views about the causes of those problems, beliefs about wellness and healing, values and beliefs about child rearing practices, help-seeking behaviors, etc. The list is numerous. Therefore, culturally competent research is an expectation for anyone who conducts social work research because the goal of such research involves improving the well-being of vulnerable and often oppressed populations. So let's recall back to the principle of justice from the Belmont report, and I think that will help to kind of put some of this into context. So why else is this important? Well, the changing demographics at the national, state, and local levels means that the United States, California, and LA County are becoming more diverse. So one way to think about diversity is race ethnicity. And so here we have some demographic information on that for the United States. And as we can see here, this is the Caucasian population of the United States, and we can see that proportion-wise it is decreasing. The African American population is about the same, but the Hispanic or Latino populations and the Asian populations are increasing. Here is some demographic information for California, and we can see the same trend in terms of the Caucasian population decreasing in proportion from 77% in 1970 to 38% in 2015. And a large part of that decrease is an increase in the Latino population and the Asian population, Asian Pacific Islander population. The African American population has stayed relatively stable, but now we have these categories of multiracial that we can see are also increasing a little bit. So what's it look like for LA County? Even more diverse. So I know this is a little hard to see, but it was the only one I could find within the time that I had. And this is Paul Ong, who was my dissertation chair. So, okay, so what do we have here? We can see that the non-Hispanic white population has decreased substantially. And then again, the Hispanic population has increased substantially during that time, as has the Asian Pacific Islander population. In terms of other measures of diversity, looking at foreign-born populations or immigration, we can see for the United States that the total population has definitely increased in recent years, and as a percentage of the total population as well. If we were to look at this graph from, say, here to this point, 1930, to 2010, what kind of relationship are we seeing? This is a bonus question. uh, I hope you're saying curvilinear because I'm going back and forth in a curving motion. Okay. Let's see, what else? Let's look at language in California. So California is this lighter magenta, and the United States is this darker purple magenta. But as we can see, Spanish is spoken in almost 29% of households in California. And quite a population here in terms of proportion of Chinese speakers as well. Tagalog, Vietnamese. Here's my family. It's 0.5%. But still, numbers-wise, it's still a large number of people. I mean, even though the Chinese speakers are 3% of the population, they still make up 1.6 million people. So that's why culturally competent research is important. But let's talk about going from competency to humility to inclusion. We used to talk a lot about competency, but now we're really focusing on being more humble and inclusive. And when I give you the definitions, you might see why. So competence implies ability, skill, and proficiency. And sometimes it can be sort of mistaken for expertise. Because if you have the ability and skill and proficiency in a particular area, then you might consider yourself an expert in that particular area, or others might. But cultural humility involves recognizing and acknowledging that the people that researchers are studying are the experts on their own lives. This is very similar to social work practice in general, right? Because we want to have a certain level of competency, but we want to also acknowledge that the people we are helping are the experts on their own lives. Now, in terms of inclusion for research, this involves collaboration with the people that researchers are studying. Community-based participatory research is one of the main ways that research can be inclusive because it focuses on community engagement. It involves community members at all steps of the research process, from beginning to end. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Your book goes over this, and then there's a video that is really good on YouTube. So this is a YouTube video referring you to a YouTube video, kind of like Inception. Sorry, I'm in a weird mood. But in any case, okay, it's by a gentleman by the name of Chris Flip. And what I'd like you to do is go watch this video. It's less than 9 minutes. I'll put the link on Moodle. But he does a really good job of explaining what community-based participatory research is. So how to be competent, have humility, and be inclusive when conducting research. All of this is adapted from Rubin and Babby 2008, which actually used to be the book we used to use for this class. Okay, step one, problem formulation. One thing to definitely do is avoid ethnocentrism, or the idea that European, Anglo-European sort of culture is the norm. Learn about the cultures being studied. Again, there is a certain level of competency that is needed, but also consult with the community about what they think is worth researching. In terms of recruitment and retention of participants, it's important to make connections with community leaders and get their buy-in and endorsement. And I just realized this is all coming up at once, and it did not have the little one-by-one thing that I like, but that's okay. Okay, we got to be flexible. Be mindful of confidentiality and what that means in the culture of the community that one is going to study. Be mindful of transportation, childcare, and other structural barriers that might prevent some people from being able to participate even though they may want to. Be mindful of the setting in which the research will take place. Again, going back to the transportation issues, it might be difficult to have people come to the researcher, so the researcher may need to go to the people. Provide cultural competency and humility training for research staff. Use staff who speak the language of the community being examined. That also means later on, in terms of the design of the study, making sure the material is available in that language. Consider anonymous enrollment if there are issues regarding stigma. Use sampling techniques that can include various groups. We talked about sampling in previous videos and in class. And use tracking methods if longitudinal research is being conducted, such as getting phone, mail, and social media contacts. Step 3, there's no one by one here either. Okay. Step 3, incorporate culturally competent measurement. So use interviewers who speak the same language or the same racial or ethnic background, have adequate training related to the cultural background of the participant, and in general are culturally competent themselves. Make sure surveys and any other instruments have translation validity. So part of this involves translating the material from English into that language and then having a separate person translate it back to check to make sure that concepts are being translated accurately. Make sure to pre-test and assess surveys and questionnaires to make sure that there's no cultural bias and that there is measurement equivalence, meaning that when we have an instrument or a questionnaire that has been used on certain populations, that it's measuring the same concepts and what have you for other populations as well. And step 4, drawing conclusions. So it's really important not to attribute results to any type of racial, ethnic, or cultural differences that may be due to other factors. So even though we want to be aware and be culturally competent and have humility, etc., we also don't want to then, make certain inferences about our data being related to those cultural factors when they're not. And then don't overgeneralize to an entire population based on observation of subgroups or samples. And I think that is it. So I'm saying the end question mark because of course this is the end of this presentation, but not of other videos that you will have to watch. Okay, until next time, bye.